How we fund these projects is very different. And the reason I say that is, the go slow to go fast and all of the upfront costs that you're doing in the project and the time and the level of effort at the beginning of the project, even before you have a project approved and you've moved to that next phase beyond pre-validation into validation and into construction. In our case, we had to do early procurement, and we actually had to figure out, how do we fund the structural steel and get it on order now? And we haven't even designed the building yet. We haven't finalized the building. So how do we fund this without having the full project funded? And that's been a challenge on an owner's side, because what happens if, for whatever reason, the project doesn't move forward beyond validation and doesn't move into construction? You've bought all the steel, and who owns the steel? So there's a lot of things to consider when you're funding, and how you do your procurement and how you facilitate moving a project forward that you wouldn't do in necessarily in a traditional process.
Integrated project delivery, IPD, and traditional procurement methods are distinct approaches to managing construction projects, with each with its own set of principles, objectives, and regulatory considerations. IPD is a collaborative project delivery approach that involves early collaboration and integration of key stakeholders, including the owner, the architect, general contractor, and key major subtrades. In IPD, project stakeholders share both the risks and the rewards. This incentivizes collaboration, problem solving, and collective focus on the project's success. In P3, the private sector often assumes significant portion of the project risks, including financing, design, construction, operation, and maintenance. Stakeholders are involved in early stages of the project, fostering collaboration in decision making, design, and planning in an IPD structure. IPD often involves single contract and joint project management, where all the parties work together toward common goals. Traditional procurement methods, such as design, bid, build, involve a more sequential and compartmentalized approach to project delivery. In traditional procurement, the project is typically divided into distinct phases: design, bid, and build, with separate contracts for each phase. This is a time consuming process. Contractors are selected through competitive bidding process and after design phase is complete. The lowest responsive bid may be awarded the contract, and more often are. Collaboration among stakeholders may be limited, as the construction team is brought in later in the process after the design is largely finalized. Contracts often involve fixed prices, and change orders, RFIs, may result in change orders with associated costs, which is the reason these projects are invariably over budget and behind schedule. Procurement regulations refer to the rules and processes governing how goods and services are acquired. These regulations can vary by jurisdiction and are designed to ensure fairness, transparency, and efficiencies in the procurement process. Regardless of the project delivery method, IPD or traditional or P3, adherence to applicable procurement regulations is crucial. IPD, procuring projects under the IPD approach, may involve different contractual arrangements and mechanisms. It often requires a shift from traditional procurement methods to more collaborative and integrated contracting structures. In a P3, projects have specific procurement regulations and guidelines that vary by jurisdiction. These regulations define how private entities can participate, the procurement process, risk allocation, and the legal financial structures of the partnerships. In integrated project delivery, project risks and rewards are shared among stakeholders, promoting a collective responsibility of the project's success. Now, I've said that and I am repeating myself because that is the key takeaway. If you're going to take anything away from this discussion today, it's about sharing risk or being risk adverse or risk transfer. The IPD emphasizes transparency, open communication, and unified project team working towards common goals. Key parties are involved from the early stages of the project, contributing to their expertise in the design, the budgeting, and the scheduling decisions. Decision making is shared and the focus on the overall project outcome rather than individual interests. This goes back to a previous episode where I talk about the we over me. It's very important to understand that the IPD process is the collective good. Public-private partnerships, or P3s, the private sector often assumes a significant portion of the project risks, including financing, design, construction, operation, and maintenance. Payment to the private sector is often linked to performance and the achievement of predetermined service level outcomes. P3 projects often consider entire life cycle of the asset, including its operation and maintenance, aiming for efficiencies and cost effectiveness over the long term. This is valid, and this is great reasons to use a P3. The issue with the P3 goes back to competitiveness. How many companies are truly structured to be able to manage a P3? Whereas with the IPD or traditional bids, construction management or design bid build, there are more contractors willing to share the risk versus take on all of the risk. IPD focuses on collaboration and early involvement of key stakeholders within the project team, while P3 involves a partnership between public and private sectors, often with private entities taking on significant project risks. So again, we're talking about the risks and the result of transferring this risk is a much higher cost to the project and ultimately to the public. The procurement regulations for these approaches can differ, reflecting unique characteristics of each delivery method and specific needs and preferences of the procuring entity. Again, risk mitigation. Clearly defining and transferring specific project risks to the private sector, encouraging them to manage these risks effectively. So in other words, if you're using any kind of project structure, whether it's in the IPD or it is in the P3, a good way to incentivize contractors to participate is to clearly identify certain risks and take on a shared responsibility of those risks. Government guarantees. Providing guarantees and insurance for certain project risks, reducing perceived risks for private investors. So again, incentivizing the market to share the risks or to assure that the risks are not 100% on the private sector entity. Also being more flexible in contract structures. The IPD contract is normally a poly-party contract, so there are multiple party members to the contract, but also tailoring contractors, designing flexible and customized contract structures that accommodate the unique needs of each project, creating a more attractive investment environment. So incentivizing P3 projects often involves a combination of financial, contractual, and regulatory measures. Well-designed incentive framework can attract private investment, promote innovation, deliver public infrastructure and services efficiently. However, it's crucial to strike a balance to ensure that incentives align with public interests and deliver value for money over the long term.